What are the advantages of my solution versus the banks? That's going to be the topic of today's video. Now, as frequent viewers of this channel are aware, I sometimes do a FAQs session where basically I deal with a different frequently asked question every time. And I've done about 4 or 5 or 6 of these videos before. Now, what a lot of people ask me is, okay, but what's the difference between what you do and what a bank does? And I'm going to give a few stories of real life situations and also talk in general terms. Of course, I can't talk about every bank in the world. There's literally tens of thousands around the world. But in general, number one, most banks, they don't tailor a solution to their clients' needs in a real way. They might say they do, but usually they don't unless somebody's a very high net worth individual client. Now, one of my client videos where I interviewed a client, a guy in Germany, and I'll put the link below here, he actually said he didn't use the banks because he feels when he goes to the banks, they'll offer him, say, I don't know, a Class A service, a Class B service, a Class C service. In other words, they know what they're going to do, they know what they're going to offer. They might have the adventurous investor, the cautious investor, somewhere in the middle. They might have a fund here, a fund here, and a fund here, and they'll kind of put you into different things, but it's not truly a tailored experience. I think that's one thing, right? That the banks are not strong at tailoring a solution to somebody unless they're very, very wealthy, in which case they'll go through the hassle of doing that. But then linked to that, I think also most of the banks either directly or indirectly do charge very high fees. So for any kind of bank which is offering that kind of tailored solution, like the investment banks who are, in fairness, offering a tailored solution, they're charging a lot more. So if you go to Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley, it's very true to say that compared to, I don't know, a high street bank like HSBC or Barclays, they will offer a much more tailored solution. However, they'll often charge 2%, 2.5%, or they'll offer their own investment funds. So they're not truly independent, which is another thing about my model. I am truly independent. I don't just represent one company or another company. I can offer the whole market to people and indeed offer people high net wealth solutions, even if you're not a high net wealth individual. I have some clients who are investing $100,000 who are in assets which usually you need millions to actually get into. But also I would give another analogy, and that's that when I deal with people, say a recruiter or a lawyer or an accountant, I always find that the specialized boutique companies that are very clear in their niche always tend to be better. In other words, let's say if I was dealing for a recruiter, I've dealt with many recruiters before. The generalists, they try their best, but they're never as good as the people who are very much specialized in my industry specifically. And I'm sure if you're watching this video, if you dealt with, I don't know, a recruiter who was specialized in your industry, your function, they're going to be much better than one of the global big guys. Likewise, when it comes to a lawyer or an accountant, I've found some of the boutique and medium-sized firms are much better than the big boys who try to be all things to all people and kind of trade on brand name. And likewise, I'm very specialized in a niche, and that's that people who want cross-border portable financial advice. So the lion's share of my clients are either expats, or they are returnees, or they are locals who want to move overseas. By returnees, I mean they might have lived as an expat overseas before, they've maybe come back home, but they realize one day they might go overseas again. So for all of those people, portability is very important, and it isn't easy to find a good provider if you are, say, I don't know, an expat in oil and gas, or a local for that matter, who's living in Angola, who's going to then come to the UK for a project, then they're going to go to, I don't know, South America. That's not easy. And every day I have people reaching out to me saying, oh, I live in, I don't know, Zimbabwe or Zambia or the Congo, and I just can't find anyone to deal with my needs. So for that kind of very specific person in a very specific situation, that is where I'm specialized in. But that's actually quite a number of people around the world. Obviously, there's hundreds of millions of expats. There's hundreds of millions of returnees. So I don't try to be all things to all people, but that is one of the key things I would say. Being specialized in a niche is something we're very good at. It's something we always focus on. I would far prefer to give solid advice to a smaller number of clients than one day try to kind of, I don't know, get to millions of clients by reducing my investment minimums. Because if you go onto my website, you'll find that actually my investment minimums are not super high, but they're relatively medium to high, because I want to actually deal with each client as an individual. So it reminds me when I was in South Korea and also Japan in the last year or two having client dinners, one client said to me, well, Adam, I hope that when you keep growing the business like you are, one day you're still going to be able to service us, because right now you can talk to us on WhatsApp, you can do things like this, you can have a drink, have a dinner with us, have a coffee, whatever. You really care about each individual client, but I hope that when you get bigger, you don't become, I don't know, Mr. Corporate. And I think that's a really important thing, and that's what I look at as well. When I'm dealing with a business, what I look for when I'm the consumer or the business owner is speed, specialization, and I don't want to deal with someone who's too corporate and too formal. And likewise, when it comes to me as a smaller, albeit incredibly fast-growing company, speed is also something you can do to a much larger extent. It's a bit like if you've got a boat and you've got a huge tanker, you can't easily move that tanker around, right? But if you've got a speedboat, you can much more easily just move around very quickly on a dime. And I think that's really, really key, because if you can see an opportunity in the stock market or in investing, doing things quickly is really important as well.